Well, good afternoon. I want to welcome everybody, both here and online, to this special call meeting, a work session of the Board of Commissioners for September 25th, 2017. And I'd like to try something different today. I'd like to start with a Pledge of Allegiance, if that's okay with everybody. No kneeling. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Amen.
Thank you very much. In that, we have the first presentation today is from Dana Johnson regarding recommendations on changes to the Cobb County Code. With that, you have the floor, Dana.
Thank you, sir. And for the record, Dana Johnson, Cobb County Community Development, here to present to you Code Amendment Package number 5 for 2017. Just going over the changes that'll be in the September and October Code Amendment cycle. The majority of these are staff recommendations with the one commissioner proposal. These are for chapters 54, which is fire prevention and protection, chapter 78, which is license permits and businesses, 86, which is offenses and miscellaneous provisions, 106, which is streets, sidewalks, and other public places, 118, which is traffic and vehicles, and finally 126, which is ambulances. Getting into the actual amendments, Chapter 54, Fire Prevention and Protection. This is a code alteration where under the Prohibited Acts section of the code, it would be prohibited to place a fire alarm on bypass mode in an occupied structure unless there is a fire watch or other standby fire personnel which are present in order to ensure the safety of the individuals present. On Chapter 78, this is under the license. Yes, sir.
May I ask a question? Can I have Chief Westbrook come up?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. You and I had a prior discussion. Can you explain a little bit more in detail about this? And this is some practice we've already been doing, correct, in certain venues and things?
We have performed fire watches in these in buildings where they're part of the fire alarm systems was bypassed for a particular function or event. We've been doing that for some years now to accommodate events at the Galleria, to accommodate events at CPAC. For instance, last year they filmed the BET Hip Hop Awards at CPAC, and they wanted to disable part of the fire alarm system to enable them to do their filming without interruption from the fire alarm system for false activations because they had a lot of smoke and other special effects going on. So this allowed us to legally go in and put the alarm in bypass and perform a fire watch to accommodate their needs. And we've got, like I said, other venues that we've done this for as well.
Okay. For example, the Braves Stadium, how does that work?
Same way, they have a part of what we've had some false alarm issues there that we've worked through, and we have placed part of that system. They wanted to place part of that system on bypass, and the only way we could do that was to post a fire watch because part of that system was disabled at the time.
And we do that if we need to, correct? And we've done that if we need to, correct?
We have done that, yes. And
so
we've
basically,
also,
we're cleaning up code here for things that we've already been doing. Is that what you're saying?
well, there are.
Just say yes.
Yes.
I guess they're tired of me already, I think.
Commissioner Burrell.
Is there a state law that overrides this? Or is it a state law that you can't bypass it?
State law is not as specific to bypassing the alarm system. It is specific to that the fire alarm should not be disabled at all or should be fully operational anytime the building is occupied. It is not as specific as this, but I feel like that this gives us the ability to accommodate customers and to address situations that more specifically and be more transparent in what we're doing from the fire marshal's office.
Right. So this would allow us to do what we've been doing, but we'll be covered.
It would, in essence, codify what we've been doing in practice,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to make sure that there wasn't a state law that we were in conflict with or anything.
I don't believe so, no,
And
ma'am.
who's the fire watch? Is it firemen or, I mean, just people walking around that are designated fire watches?
It can be either one.
Okay.
The way the ordinance that's referenced here, talks about a fire watch that's referenced in another section. So depending on the situation, it may need to be certified fire inspectors or firefighters. In other cases, where it's maybe shorter periods of time or different circumstances, it may be management personnel that the owner of the property hires. So depending on the situation and what the need is there.
Okay, thank you. One second, Dana. Rob, did Commissioner Ott have a question about that in his questions this morning?
Yes, sir, Chairman. I think it was addressed by Commissioner Burrows' question to Mr. Westbrook a minute ago.
Okay.
Commissioner Ott was concerned that this was already in state law,
correct.
and was there a need to have it in
Right.
the county code? We had planned on trying to catch Commissioner Ott sometime tomorrow before the first public hearing to explain that to him and provide the explanation that Jay just provided to the board, sir.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir. Chapter 78, which is under licenses and permits. This is dealing with temporary consumer fireworks retail stands. And basically, this is just a little cleanup as to ensure that people know that if you have a temporary stand, you must obtain a temporary business license. That we are also asking them, if they do have a temporary fireworks stand, that they provide some notice about the times when fireworks can be legally ignited per state law.
Can we make that written notice? Written notice?
Yes, the way it reads in the code, it would need to be a small sign placed there that tell people what the legal hours for igniting fireworks would be.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Chapter 86 is under offenses and miscellaneous provisions. This deals with vehicle immobilization devices. And this kind of goes along with another code amendment that's happening later on in the package. Basically, if the board approves the parking code to allow metering, then this change would need to be done congruent with that so that there could be some type of enforcement action along with the metering. If the board decides not to approve the metering, then there would be no reason to have this in the code either. I think that explains it sufficiently.
Where might we meter?
Well, there's no specific metering that's being proposed in the code. It is just providing the framework for the board to approve it if one requests it.
So why don't we just include that if one requested? Why are we getting ahead of the horse here? I'm part of the cart. Because, I mean, when you do this, but there's no law, say we're gonna meter, it looks like, so why are you doing it? It makes it look like you're doing something later down the road. Whereas I think if we intend to to put parking meters somewhere in the county, then you should make this as part of that code amendment at one time.
It's providing guidance to people who may want to do it, and I'll be happy to brief the commissioners individually on an issue with this.
That's not an answer.
He's trying to be political.
Yeah.
But we gotta peel it back and figure out why.
You don't have to name names, but is there a tent somewhere in the county to put parking meters? I'm not opposed to it, I'm just curious.
There are parking meters on private roads, which is totally, completely legal, and there's no issue with that at all.
Okay,
Because it's a private road, they can do what they want with their own infrastructure. There's an issue where, what if they wanted to extend that onto some public right-of-way? If that were to happen, then we would need a code in place in order to manage that and ensure that it's being done properly and to law.
yeah, but you'd have to first approve the meter.
Correct.
So I'm saying if we're gonna approve the meter, we approve this provision at the same time.
Correct, sir. And I think where
here
it's,
we go,
I'm
we
gonna
go.
move ahead for a second, because under the traffic and vehicles section,
Right.
there is a request to create a standardized process for creating parking meters.
Right.
So you would want to look at these simultaneously.
Okay.
If you, if you did not agree with the concept of creating a mechanism for parking meters, then I would think you would not want to approve the vehicle immobilization services, devices aspect of it, because they kind of go hand in hand.
Okay, let me take you off the hook here. If you're talking about in the garage here, right? All right, I've already told Mayor Tumlin that we're gonna be doing that. So there's no reason to hide it, okay? So, because I've told him we have a shortfall in paying our bond on that garage, and as we all know, we're not a county that believes in shortfall. So I've already told the mayor informally, we're gonna write a letter to him, letting him know what our plan is. So don't worry about that part anymore,
Okay,
okay?
sir.
So if that was your thing, you're sweating, don't sweat it. So my whole thing though is even though that's what we're gonna be doing, I think we should still do this all at the same time. I don't understand why we can't do it at the same time.
Probably because it's different code section, one's numerical before the other,
Is that out of bucket 330 or
339.
339? What am I missing here? Clearly I'm missing something because I don't get it.
I think you understand, sir.
And I think
Yeah,
Chairman Boyce,
but I gotta,
I think Commissioner Weatherford's correct. I think we could probably reference the two separate code sections, that they need to go hand in hand. But I think the reason they're being introduced one before the other is just because they are indeed two separate code sections. I think we could probably add some language, though, as you suggested, upon request or upon proper receipt of requests for going private or establishing
Exactly, yeah.
a meter zone.
because this is the cart before the horse. No one's gonna say, why do we do it? We don't have any meters. But I've already told people we're gonna do the meters, all right? And then on the 2nd of January, everybody's gonna say, where'd the meters come from? I get that part, okay? So don't worry about it.
Yes, sir.
Because we do separate sections of the code all the time, don't we? When we're looking at this, well, we'll do it at that time.
Okay.
All right, so save yourself some effort here. Unless you want to do more work.
Did someone bring this forward? Another commissioner bring this forward?
Staff brought this forward, ma'am.
Yeah, because we're gonna be doing the meters
Okay.
that no one's gonna know about, but we're gonna tell them well in advance.
You just did.
Yeah, I know, it's,
But it would make sense to have this in place before we implement this.
I just want to do it all at one time. It makes sense that why we're doing it. Right now, it makes no sense. We have no meters in the county, so why are we doing this? It's just adding to a regulation that's burdensome, to cut off the occupied space, that it's not connected to anything. So, that's my thought. Okay.
Getting into Chapter 106, this is the Street Light District Code, and there are a number of changes contained in Chapter 106. The first is some alterations to the definitions that pertain to items listed in the streetlight ordinance. There is a amendment to the creation of the districts, and the purpose for this change and the creation is it's going to allow for, in CID scenarios, some clarification as to CIDs creating streetlight districts. It also provides the ability for the Board of Commissioners to dissolve, merge, or reconfigure streetlight districts. The Town Center CID is currently in the process of trying to do a kind of a master streetlight district. And in order to do that, they're going to have to dissolve and merge different streetlight districts into one. So this kind of coincides with that effort by the Town Center CID. And lastly, it provides some criteria for small cell communication equipment as it relates to installation on streetlights. As it relates to how other providers who want to use utility poles and other mechanisms where we have agreements to utilize public infrastructure for the implementation of small cell communication equipment in the county. Also in Chapter 106 is the pedestrian streetlight district. Similar changes, again, some alterations to the definitions, some information on the creation of these districts, particularly as it relates to CIDs. And lastly, the same language for the small cell communication equipment. And I'm not going to say the same thing again. So you heard me just say that a minute ago. I think I've covered the parking meters, and I'm not going to step back into that again.
Too late.
Yes, you would, yes. 'Cause when there are specific zones created, would that come back before the board for approval?
Yes, ma'am. The way this is set up is, let me get to that page real quick, is it would allow the board of commissioners to create parking meter zones.
Okay.
So someone would have to make a request to the county, a private entity or an area where somebody might want to do on-street parking and do meters for it. They would need to do a request to the county, and then there would need to be a mechanism for enforcement. That mechanism for enforcement could either be the county doing enforcement of it, or there could be agreement between a private contractor and the county as it relates to the enforcement and collection of those tolls, which are public revenue, as it relates to the implementation of that.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
You're looking for that to be provided on public roads or private roads?
We cannot regulate this on private roads since it is private, if private infrastructure is their own private land. But, so this would only be, if the board approves this, it would only be effect on public streets and
And
public
would-
right-of-ways.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Would this be a profit-sharing mechanism, or would all revenues be returned to the county?
Since it is on public infrastructure, that is public money, but certainly through an agreement, if we did work with another entity to collect fares for us, I'm sure there would be some kind of management fee that we would pay them in order to do that, but that would be a different approval by the Board of Commissioners. The board would need to approve a contract with a particular entity in order to do that.
Okay.
The code would not allow that by itself to happen. Under Chapter 126 are some amendments to the vehicles for hire covering ambulances. Most of the changes within this are some minor clarifications contained in the code. I think the larger one is the reduction of the ambulance zones from 5 to 2.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Thank you. Can you provide what's prompting that change?
I would probably ask Director Heaton if he could answer that question for you,
Okay.
if that's okay, Commissioner, since he is the subject matter expert on
So
this.
we only have 2 zones now, right? Or
I think currently the code
Well,
says
2
there's
providers.
5.
Yeah,
the-
we have 5
The
zones.
original code that was done sometime back, Commissioner, had 5 zones. That's back when it was originally established. And so we petitioned, basically, we asked the state to narrow that down to the 2 zones that it really is, to match what we really are doing. So that's what this change is about.
But don't you see that as restricting competition?
Yes.
Because you gotta have a pretty significant investment if you're not gonna cover one zone. And we have 2 companies right now that pretty much own those 2 zones.
Exactly.
So, well, yeah, but my point is, by taking it down to 2, all right, they're almost squeezing any other competition out of, you know, out of the under competition here.
I think it, the other side of that also, it also reduces the challenges with working with multiple transport providers as the fire department in the county. Anyone is able to bid on either one of the 2 zones that already exist. And what's that to say that one of the current ambulance providers in Zone 1 would also not get Zone 4 or Zone 5?
Okay,
Because we wouldn't restrict them just to one zone.
right?
So I don't know what the benefit would be. I get your point of having multiple zones creates more opportunity for more ambulance companies. But I'm not so sure that's what we want.
Well,
Is that what we have? I'm sorry, Chairman.
we have 2.
What about for towing, though? How many zones do we have for towing?
There are 5 zones for towing. That's 1 for each precinct, is the way it's set up. But the state doesn't set, in this case, the state sets the EMS zones. We don't set, the state sets them, and then we come back and match that.
But you provided the state reset it with your prompting, though.
What we had originally, when the ambulance, when they went from one company that had the entire contract, we split it up. What we were looking at is splitting it up almost like fire battalions. We only had 2 companies that were awarded, actually it was 3 companies. One was Gold Cross, and they have since gone out of business, actually sold to one of the existing ones. And so that left us with 2 ambulance companies that we've had now for, I think it's 15 years at least.
So do they have a problem with this 5 zone issue?
The state sets the zones.
I get
Well,
that
when the
part. My
state-
question is, do they have any issue with 5 zones?
I don't know, we could ask the state whether they wanted to,
They're covering 5, it doesn't.
That's my point.
they're covering the
I
county.
don't know what the issue is here. We have 5, everybody seems happy with it. Now we want to go down to 2, which is clearly going to have an impact on on business competition. I don't buy this. I'm sorry. I mean, because the county's going to get bigger, whether people like it or not. So there's going to be more requirement for ambulances as the county gets bigger. So 5 may not be the best number, but 2 discourages any kind of competition, because in order for you to compete in one of these zones, if not both these zones, requires a significant capital input. And I'm telling you right now, I visited a company last week that told me that if they were to get into this business today, they couldn't do it because the regulatory obligations are so onerous, they can't, nobody else can compete with them. So it's forced monopolization. I think by leaving it at 4 or something, it gives at least the opportunity if somebody so chooses to do that.
And again, this is just for the 911 coverage. It
I get
doesn't
that
count,
part. I get that
all
part.
the other ambulance
Yeah.
services that already operate in the county. And again, we would have to petition that back to the state to make that change.
Do these 5 zones reflect the 5 precincts?
No, sir.
They're separate.
That's one reason we moved it to, based on the zones. And I'm not sure that they even fit our current fire demand zones, based on, and with plans of going to a 5th battalion next year anyway, that may likely change the zones.
Do we set the boundaries for the zones, or does the state?
For the EMS zones, the state sets those.
But surely we can go and talk to these 5.
That's what I'm saying. We'd have to petition to the state EMS.
And I'm sure that, given the credibility of this county for good governments, they would probably say, okay, whatever, be my guess.
I'd sure try.
Because you're gonna have to go down to 2, which means you're gonna have to redraw the boundaries anyhow, right?
We currently have those 2 boundaries already in existence
Yeah,
today. That's what
right.
we're saying. Right now, we operate 2 zones currently.
State said we had 5, but we're just.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but this is more than just being about efficient fire. This is a bigger issue for me, but that's just Mike Boy speaking.
Sir, basically what we're doing is cleaning up our ordinance to meet what the state had put out as the zone. The contract, again, when we go to 5 battalions, that may be something we look at reopening back up, but right now, we don't have plans of opening it back up based on our current contract with the 2 services.
Just to clarify, what does the state say we have in zones? 2?
Yes, that,
So all we're doing is saying our code says 5, but state says 2.
correct.
So we're not changing anything, we're just matching it to what they already do. Because the state has given us 2 zones. We could say we have 10, but we really don't. We have 2.
So essentially, we're competing right now in 2 zones. We have 2 ambulance companies, right?
Correct,
And they both each have a zone.
correct.
So what happens if we want to have a company that wants to come in and compete against one of these ambulance companies?
Then when we open back up for RFP, which our current contract goes, it's 4 years, 4 more years.
Yeah.
When that opens back up, we could consider the way the contract goes, unless we get unhappy with the services that are being provided.
I'm happy with the services.
I
get it.
am too.
There's no issue with these 2. They
Sure.
do great jobs. All
Sure.
right? And they go above and beyond.
I agree.
I mean, they helped us at SunTrust Park. I mean, they did a lot of great things.
I can tell you when it originally opened years ago, there were 3 companies that were awarded the bid. And that
Right.
was the 2 that are currently here, and then there was another 3rd
Right.
one that has since gone out of business.
Well, I'll tell you what. Clearly,
So-
Commissioner Cupid and I have an issue with this. The other 2, I mean, even if they were for it, I think we need to hear from Commissioner Rod.
No, I think we're confused because what they're saying is the state gives us the zones.
Right, I got it.
There are 2 zones.
Right.
Our code says we have 5. It
Right.
doesn't matter if we said we had 10. The
Right.
state gives us the 2, and that's
Right.
what's been
But there was a
existing.
reason we had 5. That just,
Apparently
they
the
just,
state
they
didn't
just
think
pull
so.
that number out from somewhere.
Right, and I don't know the history of,
Right.
of how it was designed as 5. I really don't.
Well, I tell you, what, let's just wait for Commissioner Ott to come back, all right? He'll be the swing vote.
And we can get some more, I can get some more information.
Nobody said we.
I would just say, you know, there's time for us to flesh this out, right? This is the first time I'm hearing of the ordinance. Just on its face, I had the same concerns that the chairman shared. Just when you see the number of players that can enter a market be reduced by more than half, it just, that on its, and, you know, on the surface just draws question, because it seems as if there could be opportunity for 5 providers. That's just what it looks like. And I understand in practicality, that's not what's going on based off of what you share. Just by looking at that, though, that is what's implied, just by looking at those numbers, by reducing the zones. And I know from talking to some people who work in the towing side, you know, it's very important for them to be competitive in those towing areas. And I know that the more zones that we have for that opportunity, the more opportunity it opens up for different players in that market. So I'm looking at these two I'm looking at this similar to how we do our towing.
Well, I'll say this, Commissioner, it's more than just having a company and saying we're applying. It's gonna be superior service, in my opinion.
Understandable.
And not all these companies provide superior service.
Sure.
I'll just put it that way. That's one
Sure.
reason we ended up today where we're at.
Sure,
There were some that were not providing what we thought were
sure.
great services, so. But we can gather more information and talk to you guys too.
Okay.
I think on this one here, let's
Just have Commissioner Ott engage, okay?
Sure.
And then might clear it up some more.
Sure.
All right. Sure. I'm sorry, Commissioner Burrow has a question. I apologize.
The records zones are different. They're restricted. They can only have one zone of the 5.
Correct.
One company.
Correct. And again,
And
that,
this is not restricted, so we
That's-
technically could have, if we went down to 2, technically, we could have Metro or Puckett with the both of them, because they're not
there was
restricted.
one company that had the county before these two. One company.
Right,
And then we opened the zoning up, again, it was many, many years ago, and there were 3 companies that qualified. And you're right, Chairman, it's tough. It's tough competition to, in the ambulance services. But the difference is, we don't set the zones, where in the record
we do.
towing, we set the zone
Right.
per our ordinance. In this case, the state sets it. Now, again, not that we couldn't go and petition to the state to change it and break it up. Again, you could do that, and chances are they would say, okay, and then we'd have to go through the bid process and back through it again.
And we first obviously have to create the 5 zones from what we currently have is 2. And we would try our best not to link that with our battalions, because 5 years from now, traffic flows may be different and a certain territory may go to a different station than it currently is. And now you got to go back and have all those zones drawn again from the state. So I want to be careful how we link it to a
Yeah,
battalion.
I get that part, but again, the 5 is for a reason, okay? When if the state changed to 2 a number of years ago, that's when we should have changed our
Sure.
ordinance to reflect
Yeah.
that.
That's right.
All right, so
That's right.
you're the victim of not having done that.
That's
Not you
right.
personally, I said
That's right.
impersonally, all
Yeah.
right? All I'm saying is, just want to make sure we clear this up. Commissioner Ott, I think, has got some insight probably also. And this will probably go forward, but I just think he should weigh in on this one.
And we'll get some history too on when that happened and
Yeah.
why.
Okay, all right, thanks. You have anything else less controversial, Dana?
This is public hearing number 1 coming up tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we'll have a second public hearing on October 24th, sir.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dana. Okay. Who's going to guide us through the next session? Buddy? Is Bill back in Denver for some meaningful conference or?
Perhaps. Taking some
More or
well-earned
less,
time off
more
for
or
the
less
day.
perhaps?
More or less. It's in a bucket. Again, I'm Buddy Tessar. I'm here to present one item for today's work session. We're here to present information on the budgets of various elected officials and constitutional officers today. Specifically with us, we have Judge Hamby and Judge Whitfield, who will be presenting information On juvenile court, we have Ms. Laura Murphy and Mr. Tom Sharon, who will be discussing Superior Court, and we have Ms. Rebecca Keaton, who will be discussing Clerk of Superior Court. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Judge Hamby for juvenile court.
Good afternoon.
Your Honor.
Just an observation, y'all are a whole lot clearer on the big screen than in real life. I don't know. My name is Jeff Hamby. I'm the, I don't know what that means.
Verbally or visually?
Visually, visually. My name is Jeff Hamby. I am the presiding judge in the Juvenile Court of Cobb County. Laura Murphy joins us. Laura is the appointed juvenile court administrator, working with Tom Sharon of Superior Court. A huge thanks to her for putting this entire presentation together. Judge James Whitfield joins us as well. Judge Whitfield serves as the president of the Georgia Council of Juvenile Court Judges, has served as a mentor to me. I'm coming up on the end of my 5th year. He has been absolutely invaluable. Let's flip to our mission statement. Let me make a couple of points of interest, really. We're an independent court, meaning we have our own employees. We're not state-run, regulated. We have our own probation department. We're operational 24/7. I once represented a young lady who worked at the Waffle House, and I didn't understand the hours, and she said, well, we don't have locks on our doors. We're open all the time. We perform a balancing act, really. On one hand, we provide care and guidance for youth, preferably in their own home, and that's key, in an attempt to secure his or her moral, emotional, mental, and physical welfare. And on the other hand, and at the same time, trying to provide safety both for the community, really, and for that child and that child's family. The stated intent of the General Assembly is to promote a juvenile justice system that will protect the community, impose accountability for violations of law, provide treatment and rehabilitation for youth, and equip juvenile offenders with the ability to live responsibly and productively. Flipping to the next couple of slides, picture of the 4 judges, Judge Whitfield, Judge Joanne Elsey, Judge Amber Patterson, and myself. Judge Whitfield stated on the way in that he was the eye candy, and that's why he's here. And I would tend to agree by looking at that photo. 4 full-time appointed judges, 75 employees. It was a little bit larger than that when I came on board. I was appointed in October of 2012, took the bench January 1 of 13, and October, November of 12, I wanted to go over County Services Parkway and see what was going on. I went over there. I was stunned. I had no idea that the services were so many, that the court was so large. I did not know, for example, that we had then and have now gang POs. These are probation officers. You walk in their office and there's gang symbols on the walls. These folks know what they're doing. They have training, and more about that here in just a second. Referrals by type, total cases, 4503. Let's go to the next slide if we have it. Thank you. The next one, I'm sorry, right in here. 4503, we handle civil cases, criminal cases, traffic cases, CHINS cases, CHINS, children in need of services. On the civil side, we exercise jurisdiction over children under the age of 18 found within Cobb County who have been abused or neglected or are in need of protection of the court, or who are without a parent, guardian, or legal custodian. On the criminal side, we exercise jurisdiction over children under the age of 17 who have committed a delinquent act and are in need of treatment or rehabilitation. We handle traffic matters for youth ages 16 and under, charged with traffic offenses, and then we handle CHINS cases. These are cases involving behavior which, if committed by an adult, would not be a violation. Truancy, runaway, unruly, ungovernable. Out in the country, we say just flat out acting the fool and not minding your mama who loves you and you're not loving her back, you see. More about chins here in a minute. Total judicial hearings. I saw this slide, I guess, Laura, 2 weeks ago, last week. 7,481 hearings as of last Friday in 2017. At this pace, we hit just shy of 10,000 hearings this year, 9,944 on pace, 8,400 last year. So we'll surpass that by, about 150, I guess, hearings. I'm sorry, 1,500. The next slide outlines the programs that the court has. These have been created to serve the needs of the children and families that come into the court. Some of these are new. In the past year, they're created by both need of population, by statute. We've built these programs with no additional county funding. We need funding to sustain them. We can answer questions about any of the particular programs if requested. Dependency referrals, 1,119 total. About 25% of our load is the dependency cases, the civil cases, the defects cases, or a parent, grandparent who makes a referral to the court on a civil case. Objective and our purpose, in quotes, by statute is to assist and protect children whose physical or mental health and welfare is substantially at risk of harm from abuse, neglect, or exploitation. To ensure that dependency proceedings are conducted expeditiously to avoid delays in permanency plans for children, and to provide the greatest protection as promptly as possible for children. The code changed January 1 of 14. Hearings required. We have to get them in immediately within 72 hours, then another 10-day, then another 75-day, and then another 6 month. Lots of times, and thus the number of hearings, we'll hear a dependency case at least 4 times within the first 6 months by law. Judge Whitfield taught me early on, when we enter an order in the juvenile court, we're not closing a file. Superior Court, the judge enters an order, we close out the file. If there's a contempt brought later, so be it, there's another hearing. But what we do is we open a file. We enter an order. All orders are temporary in nature, meaning that the parent can bring it back and come see us if they allege that something has changed. Some parents tend to think that sobriety for 3 weeks is a major substantive change, and they want their child back, and we have to give them a hearing. On the criminal side, of course, we have hold or release hearings that we have to conduct regularly. I had 2 this morning. We have competency hearings. Those are on the rise. We place children in the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. It's easier for me just to say the words than the acronym because I lose it. But they give us we don't have room. We don't have any place. When in my humble opinion, it's because they're scared of the youth. More on that in just a second. Our dependency statistics, of our numbers, 746 of those 1119, or 67% of these kids, are 10 and under, 10 years of age and under. We have 159, or 22% of that 746, children in defects custody under the age of 5. Itty bitties, as we say. Recognizing this statistic, it's troubling. We at the juvenile court established what we call a child court in 2016. It took effect, we started, I guess, in March of this year, of 17. It's new. Since its inception, 35 children have entered the program. The goal is to improve outcome for infants and toddlers through monthly meetings of service providers and the court, focusing on specific medical, therapeutic, and educational needs for these kids. Because what we give them now at ages 2 and 3 and 4 drastically affect whether they kick your door in when they're 18 years old, or 14 years old, or 15 years old. We've received no funds or additional personnel. For this critical program, we currently have 1 employee designated to handle the child court. The next couple of slides discuss the CHINs. Again, children in need of services. By statute, it is mandatory that we treat these matters separately and differently from others. Again, we receive no additional funds for human resources program development, and we've stretched our resources to max capacity to accomplish these mandates, which again are statutory. While at 9% of the total referred cases, we expect the CHINs cases to grow rapidly. 2016 was the first year that a unit was specifically established to work within the school system here in Cobb County. When I came on the bench, CHINs did not exist. They did not exist. It was a CR case, a criminal case. Judge Patterson devotes a large majority of her time and her caseload to the CHINs program and the CHINs cases. The next slide talks about the delinquent referrals, 2,239. On the screen, the top 10 offenses in the county. Delinquent referrals, 2,239, right at 50%, a little over. Total juvenile court caseload is criminal activity. We have to be careful when we say, well, I don't, but folks are afraid to hear it. We've got a gang problem in this county, and it's on the rise, and nothing shocks me anymore. In 2016, the court expanded its gang suppression unit to 4 probation officers and a skilled gang supervisor by a shuffle of personnel to meet that need. And we have, again, the supervisor and 4 POs. That's all they do. When the PO walks in, or I see the PO's name on a calendar, I know it's there's a gang involvement. There's gang allegations. I tell the parents that we're immediately going to place the child under gang suppression. And what that means, not that we're accusing your young man generally, your son generally, daughters too. We're not accusing your child of being in a gang, but here's what it's about. Here's what to look for. Here's how their life will fall apart very, very shortly if they don't get it under control. I don't know who was on call, Judge Whitfield, this weekend. I got a call on Saturday about 3 o'clock. One of my POs said, well, Judge, we picked up 3 at the Osborne game on Friday night, and the POs will go to the high school games. And there were 3 that were on an ankle monitor and under house arrest, and they let their monitor die. Oh, it hasn't charged. My bad. I'm so sorry. I understand that now that's a felony as of July 1. But they let their monitor die, and they go to the football game. But our POs are, they're good. I describe them in the courtroom. I said, this is your mama on steroids. She's not going to miss a thing. Remember when we were kids, we snuck out, right? At 2 o'clock in the morning, well, we'll spend the night at Dean's house. Well, no, you're not. You're going to the ball game, and we're gonna catch you. Every single district in this county has a gang problem. It's countywide. It's countywide. It's everywhere. And if you go somewhere and it's dark, keep your head on a swivel. Lock your door. I saw in the paper just a while ago it talked about the car break-ins, right? And I asked a young man about 6 months ago. They were talking about walking through, and they're giving me factual basis to enter their plea. And the young man admitted that they were walking through as part of a gang, the mall parking lot. This time it was the town center mall, and they call it popping cars, and they just walk through, and they just feel the latches. They're not going to break anything, but they're looking for trucks because trucks have guns, so they say. That's what the young man told me. And I asked him, I said, how many, if you pop 10, how many open? Oh, about 3. Really, 30% of us leave our car unlocked in the mall parking lot. It's what they're saying. The first bar on the left talks about a fray, and that's a fight generally at school. Not always, but most of the time a byproduct of gang activity. Our gang suppression unit works closely with the county cage unit and the DA's office in an effort to try to recognize the gang connections and then divert the attraction really of gang life to a life of positive structure. Very difficult to do. These kids have never been shown love. They haven't been shown love. They're 3 and 4 and 5 days old. They will never be shown love. They'll never be told, oh, look, you're working that computer real good. You're doing a great job on that. You stayed in the lines really, really good on your coloring. You kicked the ball well today. They'll never be told that. At home, they hear violence, they see aggression, and by the time they're 4 and 5 years old, they have figured out that any communication or any interaction with a human being is a bad thing because that's been their life experience. And then somebody tells them, some 21-year-old man tells a 13 or 14-year-old little girl how pretty she is and how much she's loved and can be loved by a group of people, and there she is. And there she is. Mentors and appropriate program development are needed. We need a mentor program in this county. Exploring ways to get mentors on board with a criminal history is something that I would like to do. I haven't talked to my fellow judges about that, but we took a tour of the YDC out on county services. Judge Whitfield, what was it, 6 months ago, give or take? I did not know and was stunned to learn that by law, a youth is only allowed to be kept in their cell for 12, they've got to be out 20 hours a day. The bottom line is they're in their cell 10, that's what it is, and they're out 14. They're in their cell 10 hours, 8 of them they're asleep, you figure, but 14 hours a day they're out of the cell. And it's recreation. There's some schooling going on too, but there were movies playing and there's basketball going on and there's TV and there's couches, etc. And if they turn 17 tomorrow and commit the same act, they're in their cell 23 hours a day and out for 1 hour a day if they earn it. And it's sort of like going, I tell the families in the court, they're in YDC. Oh, Judge, this is terrible. You're in camp, man. You're at camp compared to the adult system. And I would love to see a mentor program and some older youth who could say, or young men who could say, look, I was where you were, and this is what it cost me, and it's not worth it. And there's no middle school, high school, college. You go from pre-K to law school like this. Our gang suppression unit is proactive. We're seeking grant funds. Commissioner Cupid, thank you for your interest in this issue and your help, your proactive nature, and bringing this issue to the forefront. I recall reading about an event that I think you're having out in October. I'm certainly, I would love to get an invite. I would love to get an invite. The next slide talks about peer court. Thank goodness for kids who come before us as a first-time offender. They have a low-level misdemeanor offense. Shoplifting. They have a beef with somebody. They broke somebody's window at their store, or they have a disagreement with a friend or a neighbor. We've established a new peer court program, a partnership with the local bar association, law enforcement, schools, and the court. These are kids who, as I understand it, Ms. Murphy, have admitted it's not about adjudication, and so we can stay within statute. But this is a hearing in front of their peers, sitting as a jury who determine punishment. And a lot of times, as we know and as we configure, their peers are tougher on them than a judge would be. The next slide talks about the grant award summary. It has been a very successful year. We feel like we've been very good stewards of using the funds in the fashion and the means that were expected. of us. We have a couple of slides that talk about our goals for 18 and our budget numbers provided by finance. Our budget dollars have been stagnant. Our needs have increased. Good news, we have found grant funds. If or when these grant funds cease, then the needs and the court requirements stay the same. We're still going to have to find some bucks. I preside over the family treatment court here in Cobb. Chairman Boyce, thank you for attending our latest graduation. I can tell you that our grant funds for this year were cut almost in half from that awarded last year. Reason for that, cuts across the board at the state level, as well as an increasing number of courts seeking state funding. We've had 4 or 5 different courts who've asked to come look at Cobb County Family Treatment Court as a model on how they can establish courts in smaller communities throughout the state. The last slide, our needs, our basic needs to bring us to pre-2008-2009 status is to unfreeze our 7 employment positions. We would like a staff attorney to share between four judges. The juvenile court is the only court in Cobb not to have a staff attorney. I'll yield to Judge Whitfield or Ms. Murphy if they have anything else to add, but that's our presentation. I thank you for your time and attention.
Your Honor, could we see the previous slide? There you go. Thank you. Just for a second. And could you make sure we all get a copy of this by email?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We have some questions from some of the board members, too.
All right. Laura, you want to come on up? I'll bring my brain trust.
Thank you. It was a very great presentation and very enlightening.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. I had a couple of questions. You mentioned that when you took over, there were you have 75 employees. There were more when you took over?
I thought there were in the 90-something range. I was given a case.
Did you get efficient, or did you just not fill positions, I guess?
We had positions frozen.
Pardon?
They were frozen.
Okay. So, and you mentioned that you are appointed. Who are you appointed by?
The 10 Superior Court judges.
Okay. Just trying to. And by my calculations, you mentioned 10,000 hearings, 4,500 cases. That looks to me like 6 per day if you worked every day of the year. It seems like you're
Boy,
kind of busy.
that seems awful light. I would love it if I only had 6 a day. But if that's the math,
Well,
that's the math.
that's if you're working 365.
Okay. Okay.
I'm assuming you don't take any time off.
None.
Very.
I really thought, in all seriousness, when I saw that, I did run the math, and I thought, okay, there's 20 working days a month, equals.
I
And
just went every
think
day.
I came to 12 to 14.
Yeah, you're probably
per-
right.
a piece
I
per-
did every day, so just, quick.
Judge Whitfield probably does work every day, actually.
Commissioner Weatherford works every day without sleep.
That's it.
I can attest to that. Okay, well, a great presentation, and thank you for your time today, Your Honor. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Burrow has a question. I apologize. I apologize. You're not feeding me today.
The positions that you were asking to fill that have been frozen or to add for next year,
Yes.
under personnel services, you're the same. So what would the cost be of the 7 positions or whatever, however many you, the staff attorney, and I think there were some other,
Yeah, because we see no increase in personnel. And by the way, I really appreciate you using personnel instead of personal. So you get points already with me on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
That would be her. That would be her.
And so what's the operating is what you're requesting, an additional $23,000 on, okay? So what is that going to purchase?
That would be computers. We're upgrading some things in the courtroom,
so-
that type of.
But His Honor was saying that you're down people.
We are, Your Honor. I mean, not Your Honor. I'm sorry. I've been so much in front of judges in my lifetime, Chairman. We are down. They were frozen. They froze them again for this fiscal year. So as I've said, this is sort of our opening statement to get
Okay.
us greater excellence again for next year.
Okay.
We had 7 positions frozen. Of those 7 positions, 5 of them were straight entry-level POs. One was a court reporter, one was a senior probation officer. If I calculate that coming in at the base level, it would be, for those plus a staff attorney, it would be approximately $490,000. That includes benefits.
Okay. Sure, Commissioner Cupid.
Good afternoon. Curious to know how much of your caseload is coming directly from our school system, even
That
from a
would be,
percentage basis?
it would be an educated guess. And Judge Whitfield, I get your opinion on this too. I would say 15 to 20%.
Okay.
I would say 15 to 20%.
And the peer program, the peer
The
court,
peer court.
is that housed within the schools or is that within the courts?
We are working with the schools. In fact, tomorrow is our first, what we call our peer court law school,
Okay.
beginning of that. We have, I think, approximately 50 applicants from all schools in aggregate, of all schools in Cobb County, representing all districts, plus private schools have sent students, volunteers. This is a way for them to earn community service hours, and these are kids that all have worked on mock trials. Cobb County has a very popular and robust mock trial program at the high school level.
Okay.
So the procedures will be here on the judicial campus, not on the school campus.
Okay, it's like an awesome program.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrow? Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to take a short recess so that we're fresh for the next appointments, presentations. So let's say about 10 minutes. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. First of all, on behalf of the Superior Court and Judge Tane Kell, I want to thank all of you for allowing us to give a presentation about where we are on our courts, as well as some of the issues that will be facing us in the next 4 to 5 years. One of my best It always makes me look good, and that's evidenced by I have some state court judges who work for me. I have our Solicitor General who worked with me, and our district attorney and Superior Court judges. So I know when it's time to turn it over to the capable people, and the only reason I'm really saying this is the chairman says, then why are we paying you your salary? So I didn't have an answer for him. But on behalf of Judge Kell, I want to on behalf of Judge Kell, I want to give his apologies for not being here today. He would have been here. But as you well know, this was originally scheduled for when we had the storm, and he had to be out of town this week. So with that said, I continue to surround myself with competent people. So I'm going to ask Laura Murphy, our Director of Superior Court Programs, who put together this presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions for you.
Good afternoon. Saw you all this morning, so continuation. Let me just tell you a little bit about the difference between Superior Court and the other courts. In Superior Court, and this is by law in the state of Georgia, the Superior Court is Georgia's general jurisdictional trial court. It has exclusive, and it's the only one of all the courts that can do the following: constitutional authority over felony cases, divorce, equity, and cases regarding title to land. And we do have other courts that are trial courts and stuff, but Superior Court is the big one. So in Cobb County, our mission is to strive for excellence by providing the judiciary, the bench, the defendants, all the litigants, the attorneys, with programs and resources that are necessary to ensure fairness in every case and to promote the efficient processing of cases. And that's what we do every day in Cobb Superior Court. I may turn this back over to you. Okay, there we go. That's our organizational chart. As Judge Hamby said, this juvenile court bench is appointed by the Superior Court bench, and the Superior Court bench appoints the court administrator, Mr. Sharon, and myself as the Director of Court Services. And we have, I think we have 6 senior judges now. And then we have all these departments within the Superior Court. We have our administrative staff, the circuit defender, which, yes, it is under Superior Court. It's not necessarily under us, but it's part of the Superior Court, so we included it in our organizational chart. They have their own budget. I have that here with me today if you had any questions about the circuit defender's budget, but it is part of the Superior Court. We have court reporters. We have our jury administration. We have a law library. We have a receiver's office, and we have the accountability courts and a lab and an ADR department, and juvenile court administration under Superior Court. Well, here's our court in human form. Here are our current 10 judges and court administrator Tom Sharon. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we all do together to serve for the constitutional definition of Superior Court that I've just told you, as well as our own Superior Court mission statement that I just provided. We have within the Superior Court 4 accountability courts. I think everyone of the board here has attended at least one graduation, if not many of our graduations, for which we're totally thankful that you support these programs, because this is the wave of the future in jurisprudence, which is to make people accountable and make them whole and maybe less punitive, but to change behavior through positive and sanctions. And we have our mental health court, which is run by Judge Mary Staley Clark. And it's a very growing program. She serves on the state's Accountability Court Council of Judges, and she's a leader in this community of accountability courts, but specifically in the mental health arena. The biggest mental health provider in Cobb County is the Cobb County Jail. We have the Veterans Court, which is run by Judge Reuben Green, and I know all of you have attended those very moving graduations. Veterans Court is for those veterans who have found themselves in the criminal courts. We all know that as a veteran, those folks have had success in life. They have proven to be winners in life, but they have found themselves, for whatever reason, because by their service in the court system. So our Veterans Court is a very promising, proactive program for which, again, thank you for your support. The granddaddy of them all was the Adult Drug Court program that is run by 2 judges. We have 2 versions of drug court. We have the more serious, the longer one that Judge Krieger has been running, and then the newer one, which is for those who might not have such a deep drug problem, but they certainly have a drug problem that's got them in felony trouble, for which their life is starting to spin out of control. And that's called our Intermediate Drug Court program, which just began last year and is growing very rapidly. Our final and newest accountability court in Superior Court is the Parental Accountability Court. This is run a little bit differently. It's a partnership and a collaborative effort with the state. Judge Ann Harris runs this. This is to get parents back on track about their child support. They may be off track due to substance abuse or any other kind of matter like that. And so this is to make them accountable, to get the children their monies and get the family back moving forward. And she is running that. Within all of these courts, we have a partnership with Cobb Works for our REACT program, which is a rehabilitation and education program for which they have an office in our accountability courts area, and they provide job skills for them. They provide bonding, so all these participants that do not have jobs can go out and get a job, and that's a partnership that Cobb Works has with the Department of Economic Development, both at the state level and locally, with grant funding. So it's proved to be a very successful program in placing our individuals back on the road to recovery by having a job. We've currently started a partnership with the Zone about getting involved with them and Missy Owens' program to further enhance the full holistic approach to rehabilitation and recovery back into society. So we've been very successful. Cobb County has been on the forefront on all of these matters, and we're very proud of that. We couldn't have done it without your support. Here are other Cobb County Superior Court programs that maybe are not as popular in knowledge, but certainly are popular in need in our court. We have the Family Law Workshop. This is a partnership that the Superior Court has with the local bar association. This particular program, the Family Law Workshop, has been honored by the state of court administrators as being one of the premier programs. It is a program that many other jurisdictions come to Cobb and say, tell us how you did your Family Law Workshop, which is a method by which we give those litigants who do not have either the funds or the desire to hire an attorney the skills on some basic level to be able to go into court and not clog up the court system. So they attend workshops where lawyers, our Cobb County lawyers, give their time in a volunteer way to deal with these pro se litigants so that when they go into the court, they know what they're doing and they're not clogging up the system, as sometimes happens when you have somebody who wants to be their own lawyer, who doesn't know what they're doing, and it just breaks down the whole system. So this has been a very, as I said, an award-winning program, and we're very proud of it. We have our Guardian Ad Litem program. We have the ADR program, first program in the state of Georgia to have a mediation program happen here in Cobb County in Superior Court. We are very proud of our new facility that was paid for by our own funds on that. Didn't take any general fund money to do a lot of that work. So we're very proud of that. Divorcing Parents Seminar, our law library, of course, our Circuit Defender's Office, our screening lab, which we have, which is ever growing. Last year we did well over 30,000 screens. Many of the courts use it, law enforcement uses it, the judges use it, our accountability courts use it, other municipalities use it. It's a very good resource to have for public safety. And last week we installed our new equipment. So it's now even more potent to be able to test more more screens faster too. We have our TPO office. TPO hearings are held every Tuesday over in Superior Court South. And then we have our receiver's office, which collects funds for child support. This is a breakdown of our caseload that's in the Superior Court over the last couple of years. These next couple of slides were presented to the Superior Court Council of Judges, who, as you know, support that Cobb County get an 11th position. So some of the next couple of slides were what were put together for that to show the need. We have a breakdown of our category of cases. Well over half are criminal cases, and then we have the civil breakdown. We've been growing in cases over the last couple of years. You see that we spiked in 2015, for which Mr. Sharon and I have been going back and forth as to that bit of
Yeah,
why
I
that-
don't know where that anomaly came in, but for some reason or other, when we send our stats to the AOC, they compute them and give it a weight per case, and somehow they put a weight higher on 2015 than what we've seen since that time. Quite frankly, our caseload, as you'll see in the next slide, is going up every year. But we wanted to show you this because this was an anomaly that the best we can figure out is they were weighting the cases higher than they are doing it now. They don't just count cases, they weight it by the seriousness of the offense.
Here's you can see it's been going up. With
Hey,
total
Tom,
level of civil.
Tom,
Excuse
is
me.
that weight because those cases would take longer to handle?
That's correct. And for example, if you had a death penalty case, it's going to take immeasurably more time in the court system, so they weight it stronger than they would, let's say, a shoplifting case or a felony, a burglary, something of that nature. And there's different degrees of weight that they assign to each case.
Can you go back one with, sorry, one more?
One more?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
On your caseload by category, where does the, you said you had a TPO office, where does this fall in this?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm kind of glad you asked that question. We didn't want to go too deep in it, but most of our, or let me just say this, almost all of the TPO cases, the largest percentage actually grow out of domestic relation cases, divorce cases that have gone even worse than bad. A lot of times they have competing cases. They have a temporary protective order while they're going through a divorce proceeding. So they basically have two cases competing and going on at the same time.
So that would be under the domestic relations cases?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
If it's a filed case in the court, yeah.
And here are the
That's your raw numbers.
raw numbers of the growth of cases over the last several years. Here are our numbers as provided by finance. This first slide is for Superior Court Administration. We have different entities within Superior Court. This is court administration. We have gone down in spending in this particular unit. This is the proposed, as you know, it's stagnant. This is the judge's end of, this is a different unit. It's remaining stagnant too. I'm sorry, thank you. This is the drug court, drug lab, and you see that these expenses have increased. Some of this is because positions were moved from the court administration end back here to the lab and drug court over here. I think 3 positions, and that's why it spiked in the fiscal year 16 in the personnel services. We didn't gain any new employees, we just moved from one to the other because this is where they were doing their work. We need more money in the lab and the drug courts. Now, when this was prepared, about a month ago, we were talking to y'all about the law library. And I understand that we've changed our priority, but we just, again, want to remind that the law library at some point is going to need to be moved. When, don't know, but
We had a follow-up visit, and the temporary means that we established for the law library was found to, we believe, to be acceptable by the federal folks that came to look at the law library.
And I thought we were reconfiguring the entire space so that it was all on the same floor.
we are.
Okay.
Yes, as you all are probably aware, the Department of Justice received a complaint that the location of where the law library presently is did not meet ADA standards. And so therefore, it wasn't readily accessible equally to the public. Because of that, we took steps very quickly, with thanks of the county attorney's office and the chairman, to open what we call library annex, which is in our media room in the Superior Court building on the second floor, which does comply with ADA standards. We had a visit from the Department of Justice to view that space. There were some immediate changes we had to make based on their visit. But they seem, and they are to give us a written reply about their findings. We have not received that yet, although the feedback that we've gotten is that they're satisfied with the interim plan, but it's an interim plan. So that's why we put this in only for down the road. I think we're in good shape, to be honest with you, for the time being, but eventually we'll have to address moving the law library.
When is the plan for the new site in addition to the other offices to be constructed? Because I remember seeing a plan for that, if not last year,
Yeah.
the year prior.
You're exactly correct. We still need to move forward on some capital build-outs. And that is the build-out for the fourth floor. The middle area, does this have a? Okay, you can't see it. Okay, the middle is where the law library was proposed. We have now shifted, I believe in talking with Mr. Hosack and others that make these decisions, to move the senior judges from where they are currently located in Superior Court South 4th floor, because Judge Holmes in Magistrate Court is in need of that area for her magistrate court, to move the senior judges to that back wall. Well, this doesn't point, but okay, are you doing it the back wall?
Okay.
And if we should get the 11th judge in this legislative season coming up in 2018, the build out for that courtroom will be on the 5th floor. And there is a chambers already there that currently is used by court administration as an office. So court administration will have to move. And so then they will move to the 4th floor. And so in the discussion, it was that this would be the first move to begin to build out the 4th floor, would be the senior judges and court administration moving there.
What's the timeline for that?
I'll leave that. What's the timeline for that?
Well, we've, first of all, we're a little premature in that we don't know what the legislature is going to do. It looks like we will be getting a 11th Superior Court judge in this next session. However, our promise to the chairman and to all of you is that we would ask the legislature not to appoint or have the governor make that effective until the next fiscal year. I guess that would be 19. So we could, as early as when the legislature adjourns in March, know we're getting a Superior Court judge, and we're anticipating before the year is out, the calendar year, that then it would be a gubernatorial appointment.
Okay, maybe I'm going to rephrase my question too. When is the build-out plan? 'Cause wasn't that
Well, there really is not. As Ms. Murphy said, we originally were thinking of the build-out plan for the permanent space of the law library would take 6 to 8 months, up to a year. we feel that the senior judge space and the court administration phase will be nowhere near as long as that. They hope that they'll have contracts out by the end of this year, I'm told, by property management, and hopefully have it done in 3 to 6 months. Mr. Hosack, is that?
The end of March, Tom,
Yeah.
is what we had been
End of
shooting for
March.
Judge Holmes' relocation,
Okay, oh, that's needed prior to this?
concurrent with Commissioner. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Okay.
All right,
And I
refresh
think
me
we
on
had
the,
a figure, I'm sorry, Commissioner Whitford.
the law library, is it well used?
Yes, it is. You'd be amazed. As a matter of fact, I was wondering if it was being used in the current position it is. I'm told by the staff that there's lawyers and public in there every day. And quite frankly, since we've had the annex open, there is not a day that I don't see. We have 4 satellite computers in there that they can actually do their research online. And there isn't a day goes by that at least 2 or 3 are occupied almost continually.
Is that something that every Superior Court has, or is it just something we provide as a
Yes,
service?
it's every county has to have a law library.
Okay, so it's required by statute or by
Yes,
legislation?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Does it have to be books?
No. Well, for me it would, Chairman,
get that
but fortunately, I'm a dying breed. The law students coming out now are very heavily into technology,
Right.
and we're going to try to make the law library as paperless as we can, technologically up to speed. It is already. We'll always have some hardbacks for Georgia law, what we call the Georgia room. But a lot of the periodicals that in the past we've had to have can be accessed online. And that's what our goal in the new library will be. It'll be a smaller footprint, and you'll see a lot less hardback.
All right, so what we're trying to go to is something where you just download the stuff from the cloud.
That's correct, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully that will also be cost effective.
I would think that we would need a smaller space then.
Yes, and that's what this footprint actually, I think, is smaller
Okay.
than the space they're presently occupying.
All right. Okay.
One of the problems before about finding space was to have it, had to be on a load-bearing ground floor. So by it being on the 4th floor, we knew we had to change the paradigm of the library. So it will be much more online.
Okay, and these rooms for the retired judges. All right?
Senior judges.
Yeah, the retired, whatever. All right.
I wish they had something for retired DAs, but they don't. But shows where we are in the pecking order, doesn't it? But
We have a saying in the Marine Corps, but I can't use it here, Tom.
that,
All right? About
there you
wishing.
go.
So how many do we have?
We have 6.
6.
Yes.
And they all get their own room, right?
Right now, yes, they do.
And what do they get with the room?
Well, right now, they are in the 4th floor of the Superior Court South, which used to be, 2 of the judges have what used to be former judges' offices.
Right.
And then the other 4 have what used to be jury rooms, which is just one office.
Right.
And over here, they'll have their own offices. However, they'll be sharing the space of secretarial space, law clerk space, restroom space, and there'll be a lot smaller offices.
Right, so I mean, I don't mean to, I understand they have very important.
We use them
responsibilities.
very healthily.
Yeah. But the thing I can't get over is they're retired,
I know,
all right?
yeah.
So they can choose whether to come back to work the cases or not.
Yes, they could.
Right.
By law, they could. They have agreed, obviously, to be there when we call them,
Sure.
and there always are. But
So walk me through, I mean, they're called in, for instance, if a judge gets sick or they're going to take on a new case. How does this work?
well, each week we have what is called presiding duties.
Right.
It used to, when we had a a smaller court and a smaller county in size or caseload, presiding matters are emergency matters that come in on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. TPOs, for example, is one of it. Now those presiding duties are to the senior judges so that our superior court judges can handle their caseloads and not be interrupted. So we have one of the 6, they rotate every 6 weeks to be there as a presiding judge on their assigned week. So they're there for 5 days. There also are called in when a judge is sick or we have to bring in a visiting judge. They are first ones that we call to handle those cases.
Okay, and at the risk of them cornering me somewhere in the square, why do they have to have a room?
Well, they, of course, when they have presiding duties, they have, the public comes in, as
I get that
obviously the
part,
petitioning.
but they have their own office. I can smell, why do they have to have their own offices? That's what I don't quite understand.
Well, I guess it's
Is
true.
that just a courtesy for them?
Yes, yeah.
Go in there.
Yeah, I'll be
take a
honest with you,
break,
that's
or-
probably what it is.
Yeah,
a
okay, I was
courtesy.
just curious.
It's been that way since the senior judges have been, that I know since I've been in the court system. It's a courtesy. A lot of times we call them at the last minute to be there, and they've always responded well.
So if we just had one big room for them that would probably not be reflective of the courtesies for their position.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So I won't.
They also do arbitration, because I've been there a few times.
Well,
for
we do
zoning
not allow
disputes.
them, though, Commissioner, to do mediation where they would be remunerated separately. We do not allow them to use county space at the time for that.
No, I mean, when we were, when.
Oh,
we
yeah,
were
yeah.
sued,
They do matters for us, for the
when
court.
They come
yeah.
in, we go before.
And they
them.
just get a blanket per diem.
Okay. Well, I won't chase down that rabbit hole anymore.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I'm getting hand and arm signals from
yeah.
Laura back there, like.
Okay, we've talked a little bit about this. Well, of course, the first one we have, accountability court funding. Y'all see me routinely before you about grants, and routinely I'm told, be sure you put in there, if the funding goes away, the job goes away. Well, I understand that, and the employees understand that, but I don't know that our community understands that when these produce such a valuable service to our society. So in the future, you know, we'll probably be looking into seeking funding for stability and sustainability for our grant-funded employees. And in Superior Court, we have, I think we have 5 grant-funded employees. So at some point.
Look, I think it's important that you leverage this into benefit for the community. We get that part, okay? But like when we had the nonprofits in here last week, we know that they do a lot for this county with the amount that we provide them, and it's a much bigger amount. We get that part. But I think that in the interest of us being able to justify using public money to support programs of this nature, we just need to have someone from that program who gives it more meat. You standing up here defending it, we get that part. That's your job, okay? But we're in tough times right now, and everyone's watching how we spend our money. So I have no doubt that these programs are great. I've been to the graduations of them. I get it. But I think in order for us to communicate that to the public, when we come up and ask for these funds, rather than just having the face of the court come here, someone who benefits from that and explains that would probably go a long way to supporting your call for funding.
We understand.
I'm just trying to help you here. That's all I'm saying.
And we'll do that, Chairman. The reason why we went ahead to go ahead and do our presentation today was I'd come before you all the time and you say, we need to know, we need to know. Right. And we could have easily punted, but we said, no, we're going to be here and we're going to tell them. And I view this as our opening statement for the future with you all as to what our needs are. And so I take that, and having presented many times on things, a live person telling the benefits to his peers will go a long way, and we will certainly start that marketing end of it because it's a great program. Date funds, these are drug, alcohol, treatment, education funds. Buddy and I go back and forth on these a lot. Currently, date funds are down. This is funds that are built from, fines that come in that are down over 15%, if I recall from the presentation on Friday. But this is a date fund is something that goes towards the accountability courts and their testing and screening and evaluations and treatment. And currently, currently almost 98% of the funds or so go to one particular court, and we've been trying to go back and forth. How's the best way that we can get so that all the accountability courts can share in the revenue from the date fund and use for our courts.
And what's
Somebody
the
wants
court
to
that
say
gets,
something.
and what court gets 98%
The
of that?
juvenile court.
Juvenile.
And it was built, I mean, they went after it and got it, and it was built, and they got that for some employment positions, and that's where the lion's share of it goes. So that's where with Buddy and I, can we get those to the general fund? Can we get those to the general fund? And we just haven't been able to do it yet. But again, as I said, I'm laying out the future, so.
And this 11th Superior Court judge, how much funding do we get from the state for this?
The lion's share of the state salary for the judge, and a portion, it's usually more than half, for his administrative assistant. There is some other money that the state gives for like furnishings, things of that nature, but the rest is going to be borne by the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think that's it. Thank you all.
All right,
Thank
thank you,
you
Laura.
for every time you entertain us and giving us our funds. We greatly appreciate
Thanks
it.
for everything, and if you can get a retired DA in office, that'd be good too, wouldn't it? I'm kidding.
Leave while you're
I'm still
ahead.
gotta justify my salary to the chairman, I don't
Yeah,
know.
we're gonna be checking every room over in that
All
building,
right,
Tom.
good enough, thanks.
Thanks. No, I think we have one more, don't we? Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah, come up, Rebecca.
The right one? Okay. Thank you. Wow, mine's going to be short and sweet compared to the last one. Although I think it's really important that the Superior Court went first, because you may have some questions as it applies to my office, which is the Superior Court Clerk's office. So many of you have been to my office. You've accepted my invitation, and I've had you tour my office so that you could kind of get an idea of how my office works. It's a well-run machine, and we do a lot of processing. We do all the paperwork, everything that's just been mentioned about the accountability courts, about civil, criminal filings, all of those things are handled through my office. Every single piece of paper, whether it's actually paper or electronic, has to be processed through my office. So my statutory duty as a Superior Court clerk is to file and maintain all of these records. But we do a lot more than that. We collect money and we disperse money every single month, the checks that I write. It's amazing, all of the work that goes through the Superior Court Clerk's office. We even collect military discharges. A lot of people don't know that. We commission notary publics as well. And then recently, we're now handling passports, which is a really exciting new thing that we're doing. So, of course, the mission statement, let me see if I can follow along here. Obviously, we want to provide our service in the most respectful manner as possibly with our community. But we also want to be as efficient as possible, and a lot of that has to do with technology changing every single day. So here's our organizational chart. We have 105 employees. 4 of those are part-time. Not including my chief deputy and 2 administrative staff members, I have 10 supervisors that basically run the whole show. So I have 3 major departments. I have the court side, which includes all the courts. Then I have the real estate side, which includes all the property and all of those records. And then, of course, we have the Board of Equalization, which is the smaller of the three. So within the court division, you'll see I have several folks that handle each division. Every piece of paper that comes in has to be processed, has to be scanned with big pieces of equipment. It has to be scanned, and then it has to be indexed so that it can be visible on the website. There's a whole process that everything goes through. And then on the real estate side, of course, it's the same thing. We handle all of the real estate documents for the entire county. So every time a document is filed in our office, not only is it filed and stamped and recorded, it's transmitted to the real estate, to the Superior Court Clerk's Authority. And so it's a lot of work that we're handling. Now, I put some case numbers up here, which are quite different from the ones that you've seen before. And these are generated from our case management system. And our civil filings have remained fairly flat. Our criminal, pretty much the same, as well as our adoptions. About 15,000 filings. But one thing to remember is that these are just filings. So each document, each case may have 20 pages, 200 pages. It's all different. So there are hundreds of thousands of pieces of paper that are being touched at least once and scanned and reviewed by an indexer. So it's a lot of work. Principally, I wanted to give you some numbers on, this is the bulk of where we get most of our revenue is from real estate. It comes in the form of intangible taxes and transfer taxes and of course our recording fees. So it's on the rise, I think, because the economy is starting to come back. So our intangible taxes in 14 are $13 million. And in 15, $17 million. And then in 16, $19 million. And I think this year we're expected to have something somewhere in the $22 million range. And then our transfer taxes, $5 million, then $6 million, $7 million. I think that's going up to $9 million this year. And then our recording fees at $2 million, almost $3 million every single year. So we have the real estate department is a major machine and a revenue generating machine.
Where do those taxes go?
I was waiting for somebody to ask that question. The intangible taxes go mainly to all the municipalities, the 6 cities. That money's divvied out. The majority, a lot of that money, goes to the Board of Education. So the money that we collect, there's a certain percentage that goes to each jurisdiction. And the same for the transfer taxes. Of course, the recording fees are ours. And as I don't know if you guys recall, but when you guys came over, I showed you a monthly kind of a budget. And our real estate department generates about $2.5 to $3 million a month. And once all that money is dispersed, there's about anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 every single month that goes into the pot, the general fund. So we well pay for ourselves. I've got
Excuse me, you said they go to other agencies, but that's the ones where the real estate where the property is located.
Correct.
So some of it some of it's in the county.
Well, we're mandated to collect these fees, and then we're mandated to disperse these fees to each jurisdiction, depending on where the intangible tax was collected.
Correct. So some of that is in the county as well, correct?
Oh, yes. Some of it goes to the county. There's a percentage, that goes to the county.
Would say the majority would probably be in the county.
Well, no, the majority, it doesn't go to the county, unfortunately. I would say the majority, wish I had some numbers with me in that respect, the majority goes to the Board of Education.
Well, okay. The majority of everything seems to go.
Yes.
So
I was amazed and stunned.
What is an intangible tax taxed on?
It's an excise tax. So it's generated,
Why would it go to the Board of Education? Is that a state mandated distribution?
It's a state mandated distribution that when someone files and they have, if it's more than 3 years, if they have a loan on that property that's more than 3 years, then there's a certain percentage that they get taxed. 25,000 is the max amount of fee on the intangible tax. And that stayed the same for probably 25 years.
So this is a state thing that they get the money.
Well, no, it's not going to the state. The intangible taxes
Yeah,
all
no,
come
I'm talking
back to
about-
us.
But it going to the Board of Education. I'm trying to figure out
Oh.
why it would go to the Board of Education.
Oh, yeah. I don't know myself. I wish I could answer that question, but that's one of my goals. We
Yeah,
have
we're gonna find
certain
out. I don't-
requirements.
Yeah, I don't mind them getting money, but I just can't figure out what the connection between the Board of Education and this taxes are, other than somewhere, there might be a state law that mandates that we send it to the BOE.
Oh, I can assure you that any money that we send to the Board of Education or anywhere else is mandated by law.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Okay, thanks.
and I plan on researching that myself. Our 3-year budget is basically the personnel, $5 million. It's gone up a little bit through the years. One thing to look at in the operating side is that we have the reserve fund. That's actually our technology fund that comes out of real estate. It's another form of revenue that goes to our technology fund. And it's generated by transmitting real estate documents to the authority. They pay us for that transmission per document. And then they also pay us when folks go onto the authority's website to get copies of real estate documents. Real estate agents use it. So we get copy fees and transmittal fees. And so our reserve in 2016 was $375,000. And so we've used a lot of that money to pay for technology that we've desperately needed. And so whenever we have something that we need to purchase, and I've got several items here I can tell you about, we use that technology fund. Now, this is the 18 proposed and requested budget. It's about the same. Now, the Board of Equalization, they have a separate budget. So basically, we have personnel expenses, operating expenses, no capital. And that stays about the same. Our personnel services are for the employees that work there. Our operating expenses include the fees that we pay to board members. And then this is the proposed budget for the Board of Equalization, which is basically about the same. So there it is. So this is the really good part because I feel like we've accomplished a lot in a short amount of time. We have managed to replace our land record system, our real estate system. It's the best in the state. And we have just completed the installation of that system and the use of that system, and we own it. So that means that we won't be paying for any kind of license fee or anything like that. It's brand spanking shiny new as a result of our technology fund. We're about to start e-filing in real estate as well. We're just about to begin that right now. We've already started e-filing on the civil side. So e-filing technology is changing every day, and that brings improvements and efficiency. And it changes the workflow as well. So we've been successful in doing that. And then just recently, we were able to get passports. So that's a great new source of revenue as well. We're just doing it on Wednesdays right now. So we don't have what I did is I put passports at the Board of Equalization, which is out at the county government office because of parking.
So you're doing it instead of the post office?
Correct. There may be some other post offices that are still doing it, but the statute allows the clerk of Superior Court to handle passports if you get approved by the federal government.
How long has that statute been in effect, you know?
I don't know. A long, long time.
Because, I mean, I always went to the post office. I didn't know you could go anywhere else.
Well, some of the southern counties have the passports in their counties to help generate some revenue for them, I suppose. But, and some counties don't do it. Paulding County doesn't do it, doesn't handle it. I think Bartow is sending us all of their work. Cherokee County's been doing it for a long time, and they were really the ones that allowed us to have this because of their great relationship with the feds. So
Well, we need to get that word out. So can you send us something, put in our newsletters and stuff? Because I didn't know. Well, I didn't know. It wasn't in mine. So.
Well, the thing about that is we're only doing it one day right now to kind of, it requires a lot of training because you really have to be accurate in how you handle passports. And so we have 2 employees that are learning how to do it. And since the day we opened, it's been busy all day long. Now, these are employees that work in the Board of Equalization and have other job duties. So if we get to the point to where it starts to grow even more and we have more of a need, then we'll start advertising even more out to the public. But we don't want to be overwhelmed because it's just one day a week right now.
So do you, I'm assuming you keep the funds from this processing effort?
Yes, the funds,
Okay, so does it equal $6,300, which is the plus up for the Board of Equalization?
it will. It doesn't right now.
So just tell them
But
to
it-
work,
but
tell
it
them to work
will.
faster.
Yeah, it will. It doesn't right now, but it will.
Okay, all right. I'm just curious.
And we've had surpluses in our budget, and of course, whenever we do on our side, it goes to the Board of Equalization. So I don't think we've ever been in the red. So, but let me just say that the upgrades, not the upgrades, the goals that I'm looking forward to. One is the upgrade of the court division case management. Now, we have one now, but with a unified system that hopefully will happen sooner than later, that's going to help us to create this case management system that is really going to make things even better and even more efficient. And hopefully it will include some tools for the judges so that they can manage their calendars and their caseload. The thing to remember about all of this is that every Superior Court judge, including the senior court judges and the juvenile court judges, there is a clerk in every single one of those courtrooms, a Superior Court clerk. And they require a lot of training for all of that. So with a new judge also comes a new clerk. We've had several of these new accountability courts, but we haven't had any new employees. And we're the ones collecting all that money, and we're the ones dispersing all the money. There's probably 20 different places that all of the money from the courts has to be disseminated. And it's a real, real big job. My goal is, of course, to mandate e-filing, because that's going to really increase the revenue. And right now I'm working with the Superior Court judges to get that in place. So right now it's just voluntary. If you want to e-file, you can. But as soon as it becomes mandatory, those fees are going to go up exponentially.
What about pro se litigants? Would they come on site and then?
Well, right now, we're starting with civil attorneys.
Okay.
Civil filings attorneys is what we're doing right now. And we anticipate at some point in the future, we will do pro ses. But that's going to require a lot of ingenuity to handle that, because It'll help out the courts a great deal. But being able to, I mean, we're gonna have somebody that's gonna have to help them e-file. We're gonna have to have kiosks in our lobby to do that. So we're going to be doing it. Eventually, it's gonna be e-filing everything. Pretty soon, we're not even gonna know what paper feels like. So,
Interesting. With all the files that you have in your office, I'm sure that would help with the management of all those papers in there from
I'm
the
sorry, I
filings.
didn't,
With all of the files that you do keep in your office, I mean, that would help with that regards. That would just be a technical curve for some
right,
people in
right.
the
Well,
office.
right now, we still have a lot of those paper files. And the ones that are e-filed are not printed out and then put into a file. The judges have to actually look on their case management system to view those files. And that's getting more and more complicated. Our system is just not where it needs to be. It's not 21st century case management system. But hopefully with the unified court system, we're going to have that. So another one of my goals is to increase revenue in intangible taxes, actually. It looks like intangible taxes are a great source of revenue, but I've recently discovered that there are intangible taxes that have not been collected and should be collected. So I am focused on that. Now, I've got needs on there. I want you to disregard that. This was done about a month ago. And I want to be totally upfront with you. What I really need in my office is I really need to pay my courtroom clerks. I really need to reclassify their position. After this last class in pay that happened, the folks on the bottom end got some increase, and the folks on the top end. But the ones that were in the middle, which were all my courtroom clerks, nothing. They didn't get any increase at all. But my courtroom clerks are the ones that are the most skilled. It takes as long as a year sometimes to train folks in the courtroom. They handle the felony matters, they handle the divorce matters, they handle sometimes whether a defendant, if the paperwork's not done correctly, whether a defendant gets out of custody or not. There's just a lot of responsibility that goes into that. And they ought to be the highest paid employees in my office. And right now, it's not happening. And we ought to have a system where the state court clerks want to move into a superior court position, but nobody wants to move because they're not getting paid anymore in superior court, although the responsibilities are greater. So that's what I'm going to be working on and appealing with this class and pay. I understand they still have some work to do on the description of the job duties. And so I'm hoping through that process that I will be able to reclassify those positions. That's what I really need to happen.
Okay.
No questions? Yeah.
On the e-filing and any of the operational things that you're implementing, is there a cost associated with doing that?
A cost associated with e-filing?
With any of the programs, is there a cost associated that you'll
Well-
need an increase to put those in place?
Let me think about that. Not really. I mean, I'm taking people from my front counter to accept the documents through e-filing.
Okay, so you
Um,
have the personnel that'll be, but any equipment, electronic to do that?
Well, I've got a new technology person, my one and only technology person, who handles all of that for me. Without him, without that one employee that works under me as opposed to IS, we would not have e-filing. We wouldn't have a new real estate program. I mean, he handles a lot of these things and makes these things possible. But as far as an expense, no, it's actually going to be a revenue source. We share some of that with Peach Court, who is our e-filing provider. So this is actually going to make things more efficient, and maybe even we'll need less employees because we won't have to have 6 people at our front counter handling all the paper, and we won't have paper expenses, which means we won't have copy expenses. So we're looking for a way to generate a revenue once paper disappears. So
Okay. So you don't have a cost for additional people or equipment or whatever right now?
Well, I'd love to have additional person in my technology department. But right now, to specifically say it's costing us this much money to handle e-filing, no, not that I can think of.
Could you make sure we get a copy of this presentation, please?
I'll be happy to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and, discuss these issues with you. I think it's really important, and I appreciate it.
All right, keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.